Okay, from the looks of it, we are live on both Facebook and YouTube. Well, I don't see it on Facebook yet. Let me see what's going on over on Facebook. Okay, yes, we are there on Facebook. Why does it say a study of 2 Peter 3:18-20? That is not the right title. Let me see if I can. Well, I guess I'll just share it as it is. While I'm doing this, if you're watching live, then please do. Well, even if you're not watching live, if you're watching the archive, I would still appreciate you sharing it out. I'm going to share it on a few places. On Facebook, I share it on my personal timeline, share it on a couple of pages. So there goes that page. And got one more page I want to share it on. There goes that page. And then we will get started. All right, I think we're good now. Let me make sure I'm on YouTube. I think everything is good on YouTube. People are slowly coming in on YouTube. Let me go to the view page and see what's going on over there. Okay, yeah, we're live on YouTube. And I'll close that now. And we're live on Facebook at the same time. So if you make your comments over on Facebook or YouTube, I should be able to see those in either place. I don't really need the Bible screen up yet, so let me flip back over here and see what is going on today. Welcome to Bible Q&A on this Monday, March 23rd. And these are strange days, aren't they? Strange days. Don't pay any attention to that. I had something go awry there on my chin for some reason. Stuff like that only happens when I'm going to be on camera. But that just goes along with what we're talking about. These are strange days, aren't they? I've never seen anything like this in my life. Yesterday, we had our services, just morning services. We've canceled all other services. We typically have a Bible class on Tuesday mornings. That's canceled. I will be live streaming that class. I think that's what's wrong with the title that you're seeing on Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook, you see the title there, Study of 2 Peter. Well, I think that was from where I streamed our Wednesday night Bible class, and that title is still stuck in there. I need to go in the settings, I guess, and change that. But we're streaming our Tuesday morning Bible class at 10:30. I'll be on 10:30 tomorrow. Now that will be on Northside's Facebook page and YouTube channel, and you can look those up. Just if you're on YouTube, just search for Northside LaGrange Church, Northside LaGrange Church, and that will come up on YouTube, and you'll be able to subscribe to Northside's YouTube channel. That's where I typically stream the Bible classes and sermons for the Northside congregation. And then, of course, Northside's Facebook page. Same thing on Facebook. If you search on Facebook for it's LaGrange Church of Christ Northside, I think it would come up the same way if you searched Northside LaGrange Church, either way. But the Facebook page itself is LaGrange Church of Christ Northside. So you can look for our Tuesday morning Bible class there and our Wednesday night Bible class there, as well as the services on Sunday. And like I said, most of the stuff that is North Side's activities get streamed on those channels. Here on my channel, on YouTube, youtube.com/preachernorm. This is where I do Bible Q&A, and if I'm doing something more of a personal effort, then I typically do that on my own channel. How's the volume? It looks like on my meter I've got it cranked up a little too loud, but then some people were telling me the other day that it was too low. So on my meter that I'm watching, it looks too loud. But if it sounds okay to you, then that's where it needs to be. But if it is, blasting out too loud, then please let me know. Hello, Gwendolyn. Good to see you watching over on YouTube, and good to see my Uncle Donald watching over on Facebook. Appreciate y'all jumping in. And the control room that I'm looking at, I can't see who's watching unless you post in the live chat to let me know you're watching. So please do. But getting back to what I was talking about, I've never seen anything like this in my life. I've been through extreme weather conditions where everybody was snowed in or iced in, and nobody was moving around. I've been, in a lot of different situations. I've never seen anything like this. It is, in some ways, it's, pretty frightening, isn't it? And if we didn't have the hope that we have in Christ, if we didn't have that hope beyond this life, then I could see where these things would be, utterly terrifying. But it's not that way for us, because we know that whatever happens in this world, we're going to ultimately be okay. And we know that this world is not going to end, that this world is not going to end by a virus. It's going to end by fire when Christ comes back, in flaming fire, taking vengeance on those who know not God and do not obey the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. But I've never seen where both federal and state governments were issuing so many precautions and so many warnings, so many mandates for how to respond to what's going on. It is strange. That's the title of tonight's episode, Strange Days. And it is strange days. We've canceled our gospel meeting for early April. And one of the main reasons, and I think it may be one of the reasons why a lot of congregations are canceling their services. Hello, Tommy. Good to see you. It's one of the main reasons congregations are canceling their services. I saw somebody post on Facebook the same thing that I had been thinking, and I had said to my brethren here at Northside about how we should handle our services, is that this may, well, I know it's the only time I ever remember in my life, but it's actually harmful to the reputation of the church to say that we're going to continue to assemble no matter what. And I've seen some really poor comparisons being made. For example, this is probably one of the worst ones. People comparing this, the situation that we're in right now, comparing this to the persecution that the church has faced at different times in history. Hello, Richard and Sarah on YouTube. Good to see y'all watching. they're comparing this current situation with the way that the church has reacted to persecutions at different times in history. The specific thing I've seen referred to is the persecutions of the early church in the first century, and how when the Jews were persecuting the church, and the Romans then were persecuting the church, how the church continued to assemble, even in the first and second century, meeting in homes, and meeting kind of secretly in the face of that persecution, but they continued to meet. And taking that and comparing that in criticism of the way some congregations are reacting now in this situation to canceling their services. Well, that's an apples and oranges comparison. It's not the same thing. Congregations now, well, and I can say, here at Northside, for a fact, the reason that we've canceled services here at Northside isn't out of fear of persecution. Hello, Heather. Good to see you watching this evening. It's not out of fear of persecution. It's because it is a health risk. It's dangerous to be in a confined area with a group of people. If somebody were to round us up and tell us that you've got to stop assembling on the first day of the week, or we're going to throw all of you in prison, we would tell them, well, then we'll have our church services in prison. Right? We're not going to stop assembling as the church and worshiping as the church in the face of persecution, or in the face of hardship, or turmoil, or whatever. But when it's actually when me being in close proximity to one of my brethren is actually a health hazard to them, that is, I might make them sick and they die. Well, I love them. I don't want them to die. I can see that I am blaring in the microphone. I'm going to turn that down. And y'all give me some feedback on the volume, because I was told that the volume was kind of low last time, so I turned it up some, but now it looks like it's peaking up in the red. So I turned it down some. So y'all let me know. But if I thought I was sick, or could potentially infect somebody else, don't we tell brethren that if you're sick and there's any possibility that you could be contagious, it would be appreciated if you would stay home, right? That's not forsaking the assembly. That's using good sense and being rational in your thinking, and making the decision to stay home, maybe not even necessarily for your own protection, primarily not for your own protection, but primarily for the protection of other people. And so, I really don't get the comparison that people are making. Hey, maybe I can fix that title issue right here. I just noticed this box. So I'm going to see if I can fix the title. And by the way, this is episode 199. That means next week, Lord willing, if we have Bible Q&A next week, that'll be the 200th episode of Bible Q&A. That's nice. All right. Hopefully that updated the titles that you're seeing. But anyway, that's kind of my take on how congregations are reacting. I think it is perfectly rational and reasonable for congregations to be canceling services and to limit contact with one another, because we're not talking about people threatening using the force of law to threaten us to not worship God. If we did that, we'd start inviting each other over to each other's homes to worship the way they did in the first century. The church building type assemblies really didn't start until I believe it was Constantine made quote Christianity, and by that time the apostasy was rolling pretty good. So New Testament Christianity really wasn't at the forefront at that time. But he proclaimed Christianity the state religion of the Holy Roman Empire, or that's what transitioned the Roman Empire into the Holy Roman Empire, because he made that proclamation to make Christianity the state religion. I believe it was Constantine. I could be mistaken about that, but I think that's who it was. Then you started seeing these huge cathedrals being built because they were getting state money. They were receiving government money to build these huge like temples to rival the the pagan temples that had been prevalent for so long. So if it were a matter of threat of persecution or really any other threat, then we would accommodate that, and we would adapt and we would adjust and we would continue assembling the way that we always have. But this is not that. This is a situation where it's physically dangerous. It meaning that I am a physical threat to you by being too close to you, right? Now, with that said, we did decide here at Northside that we would have our Sunday morning services, and we had services yesterday. This is something I had noted down here to talk about. So we did have our services yesterday, and it went fine. It's the first time I ever remember where we had more out than in. You always have people out because they're sick or traveling or what have you. And sometimes you do have, several out at the same time. But I never remember another time when, now I know what you're referring to, Donald. The volume is fine, you mean. You said it's fine, and I've been trying to think, what's he referring to as being fine? You mean the volume. I appreciate the feedback. Thank you. I never remember a time when there were more people absent than there were people here. But that's what we had yesterday. We had, I just kind of ran it off off the top of my head, and I think we had about 18. And that is over half, a good bit over half of our congregation that wasn't here. And I'm not saying that that's a problem. It's understandable. We encouraged that. If you're uncomfortable or feel unsafe, either for yourself or for others, then don't come. And many chose not to. And again, perfectly understandable. I don't blame a single one. That's one of the things I spoke about yesterday morning is how I see some people posting things about, lack of faith and the sin of fear and the sin of little faith. Well, it's in my opinion, and I'm just speaking from my opinion. This is one of the times I always say, get your Bibles. This is Bible Q&A where you ask the questions and the Bible gives the answers. And we're going to talk about we're going to take a Bible, or we're going to give I'm sorry, my phone is blowing up over here for some reason. We're going to give a Bible answer to a Bible question. Well, we're talking about things now that are matters of judgment, matters of opinion, and so I'm careful to say that I'm giving my opinion. In my opinion, Um, it's the rational decision to make. It's reasonable to um, give consideration to whether or not I should attend services. So I don't think it's lack of faith or it's fearfulness. I'm gonna put my phone over there where I can't see it because it's distracting me. Um, I don't see it as a lack of faith. It's completely rational to look at the current situation and say, maybe it would be better for me not to attend services today. It's not forsaking the assembly. It's not being unfaithful. It's using good logic and common sense. How big of a threat this illness is or not, I don't think we really know that yet. I've heard, projections to both extremes that it's not going to be near as bad here as it was in China and Italy, for example. I've heard others say it's going to be much worse here because people are ignoring the precautions. And so, I really don't know. It'll be, a situation where maybe we'll look back on it and say, well, man, we really overreacted to that. and that would be great if it turns out that this is a severe overreaction. But it's also possible we could look back on it and we could say, boy, if people had taken the precautions more seriously, there could have been a lot of lives saved. So right now we just don't know which way it's going to go. Things are kind of still up in the air, and they haven't peaked yet. I don't even think, from most of what I've heard, it's not even close to peaking yet. And we don't know where the peak is going to be. So, if people are very concerned about getting in a group of people, then I don't blame them for that. But we did have services yesterday. It went well. We took special precautions. We were very clear with everyone. Don't get too close together. Don't shake hands. We're a loving congregation. We greet one another with hugs and handshakes and shoulder bumps and we're an affectionate congregation. A loving congregation, and it's a blessing to be in a congregation like that. But yesterday we had to really impress on people, and I think most everybody already knew, of course, but don't get too close together. Don't make any physical contact. Probably the first time I ever remember being in an assembly where no one made physical contact with another person. And it is strange. It's a strange feeling. It's it's kind of a strange environment. But I think it's completely reasonable to take those kind of precautions. When we served the Lord's Supper yesterday, I should have looked on YouTube sooner because everybody over there saying volume's fine. I had thought that I would bring the cups in and show you how we did the cups yesterday, because to me I thought it worked out really well. Nobody touched anything other than what they were taking for themselves. And what I did is we just used the cup tray. We didn't use the bread tray. We used the cup tray, and I put out the same number of cups that we would normally have, which as it turned out was way too many. But I didn't know how it was going to be, so I went ahead and made the same amount that we always do. So I put out the cups in the trays, and I put a piece of bread in each cup, and then I put another cup on top of that and put the juice in that top cup. And the men didn't come up to the table. I sterilized my hands, and I took the tray, to each individual. We didn't pass it down the pews like we normally would. I held it out to each individual person that wanted to take it, and they just took their 2 cups, the stacked cups. They took their 2 cups out of the tray, and then I went back up to the front, put the trays down, and called on the man to give thanks for the bread. And when he had given thanks for the bread, we all took our piece of bread out of the bottom cup. And then I called on the man to lead the prayer for the cup, give thanks for the fruit of the vine, and everyone took their fruit of the vine, and it worked out very well. And then for the collection, same thing. I called on the man to give thanks for the collection, and then just one person, me, took the tray to each individual person. It didn't get passed from person to person. So, there was really no contact between people at all. And so I thought we did a pretty good job of how the services were handled. Unless something else happens, then we'll continue doing that. I mean, when I say unless something else happens, I mean unless it is explicitly stated that no public assemblies of any kind can be had. I don't know how some of the other states that are on, quote, lockdown, like Alabama, Louisiana, California. Yeah, I think there's, I don't know all the states off the top of my head, but there's several states that have been put on what people are calling lockdown, where it's supposed to be prohibited by law to have any kind of public assembly. Even though from what I hear from people in those places, nobody is paying attention to it. Everybody's kind of ignoring the proclamations, and they're still going out in public gatherings. That's why we don't know how bad this is going to get, because people aren't really taking it seriously. Some people may be taking it too seriously, and other people not taking it seriously enough. So, we really don't know how it's going to turn out. But our services yesterday went pretty well, and I think that's how we'll continue to do it. Again, I'll have a live stream Bible class tomorrow morning at 10:30. And then I'll live stream our Wednesday night Bible class. And then we'll have our Sunday morning services again next week. Again, unless something changes this week that alters that plan. I was scheduled to be, and if you're watching on the Commerce Church of Christ Facebook page, as you've heard me say before, the Commerce Church of Christ supports Bible Q&A. I'm always very appreciative to them for their support. And if you're watching on the Commerce Church of Christ page, we had scheduled a Bible Q&A live there for this Thursday, Thursday the 26th, and of course that has been canceled. And we posted that on the Commerce Church of Christ Facebook page that event has been canceled. However, I will still do a live stream Bible Q&A on the Commerce Church of Christ Facebook page. So if you're watching Bible Q&A on the Commerce Church of Christ Facebook page, we will have a live stream Bible Q&A on the Commerce Church of Christ Facebook page Thursday night at 7. So be watching for that. Other than that, I think that that was about all the kind of announcements I had. I wanted to ask the question for those of you that are watching, and I'll try to monitor the comments. What were some of the things that you did? I know here in the county where I live, I think it was just us and maybe two other congregations that had any services at all. We limited ours to just AM services. I don't know what the other congregation did here in town. The one of the congregations here in town, they only have morning services, so I know if they met, it was just in the morning because that's their normal meeting. So I know that they met. I don't know what the other congregation did, if they had all of their normal services or not. But we just met in the morning, and there were several congregations that completely closed, didn't have services at all. Which I'm not making any blame to those congregations that decided to do that. That's their autonomous right to make that decision out of concern for the welfare of their members. I don't fault them at all. So I'm just curious to know what some of you did, some of the congregations where you attend. What were some of the things that were done at the congregations where you attend? I know Tommy, who's watching, or he was a little while ago. I don't know if he still is. Tommy, if you're still there, let me know. But I know that they met and had morning services yesterday. What did I do? I messed it up. I lost the comments on Facebook. There we go. Okay, it's back now. All right. You know, it seems like when an app is really working good and working the way that it's supposed to, that's the time that they decide, hey, let's let's make a change to our app, and then it's not working good. I'm really not liking this new Facebook, and I know some of you have said that you haven't noticed any differences on Facebook, and that's great for you. And if you get, my wife got the invitation, I think today on her Facebook to try out the new Facebook, and I'm a natural born guinea pig, I guess. As soon as I see some kind of beta rollout of anything, I'm like, yeah, I want to try that. Well, I wish I hadn't have on Facebook because it's awful. Okay, but I got the comments back now, so that's good. So let me know what some of you did for your services. I'm going to read the YouTube comment chain. Gwendolyn says, hi, Norm, joining in. Good to see you, Gwendolyn. Richard Briggs says, fine on my phone, and I'm glad to see you watching this evening, Richard, and I'm glad the volume sounds okay for you on your phone. You know, when I'm checking the analytics for my YouTube channel and my Facebook channels and stuff, and I check the analytics, it always amazes me how many people watch all of their content on their phone. And I do too. I watch a lot of, stuff on my phone. It's not my, primary way of viewing. I typically watch on my computer when I'm watching videos, but I do watch a lot on my phone. But the statistics for people viewing on mobile devices is always the highest. And that's interesting. That's why, like when I work on my website or design things for distribution, I typically gear it toward mobile first, and then how it looks on desktop, because most people are watching on mobile. So that's interesting. Good to see you this evening, Richard. Sarah, good to see you. Hi, Norm. It's Sarah. And I appreciate you letting me know it's you, because I know that sometimes Kyle or Emily have your phone and are watching. Um, Gwendolyn said the volume's fine for me. Thank you. Sarah said volume's good. Thank you. Richard says, Norm, the volume is good on my phone. Sometimes the problem is if you record at a lower volume and we listen later, it's low. So record it higher. We could always lower our volume to our liking. Okay. Thank you, Richard. Sarah, I'm sorry, Serena is watching. Good to see you, Serena. Now, Sarah is a member here at Northside, and I know that there's a special concern over Sarah's mother in this environment. She has some other health issues, and that's typically who is at the highest risk for this virus is people with other health issues. I think if I remember the statement correctly, there was a statement made that said that all of the fatalities, I'm 100% of the fatalities from this virus were with people that had existing health issues. So I can certainly understand Sarah's concern. Her dad works at a place where somebody tested positive where he works. I don't think it was somebody that he himself was in contact with, or I could be wrong. Maybe it was. He texted me himself and said that because of his proximity to someone that tested positive, he was choosing to stay home, and that was out of concern with exposing other members here to that. And I certainly respect and appreciate that decision, as I told him. So Sarah and her family and her parents that live in close proximity decided to stay home yesterday. And again, I respect and appreciate that decision. But we live stream our services here, usually because of copyright issues, where I early on I was streaming the whole service, songs and everything. Well, YouTube started giving me notices of copyright violations because some of the songs were copywritten, and I guess their algorithm, if it's a copywritten song, it picks it up and it flags it. And it said that the copyright holder had the right to run advertising on our video during that portion of the video where their copyrighted material was being used. Well, I didn't want that. I don't want somebody else putting ads in our videos. I don't put ads in our videos, and I don't want other people putting ads in our videos. So I just decided that we would just stream the preaching, so that people could watch the sermon. Well, yesterday I went back to streaming the whole service because I knew that there were people that were going to be at home and were going to be joining in the service by via the live stream. And so that's what Sarah says when I asked the question, what did other people do for their services yesterday? Sarah said, we were worshiping with you through technology yesterday, and that's great. That people are able to do that. And I saw a post all over the Facebook is just, my Facebook timeline is full of posts about people live streaming their services, how to worship at home. I saw many posts, people baking their own communion bread so that they could take the Lord's Supper along with the congregation during the live stream. And I think that's great. If you can't be at the services, then that is a great alternative. And it's one of the reasons that we have invested in live streaming like we have here. We've spent money to purchase equipment to be able to live stream the services, because we've heard from several people over the years we've been live streaming our services, how much they appreciate being able to watch the sermon and feel like they're taking part in the services, even though they're not able to be here. And so I'm glad we're able to do that. And the way technology is now, I've had people tell me that well, we're just not able to do that. We don't have the resources to do that. We can't afford the equipment. Look, any member of the congregation that has one of these, any member of the congregation that has a smartphone that uses YouTube or Facebook can turn on that phone and stream the services to a YouTube channel, or to a you see that tripod back there behind me. I've got a head for that tripod that holds a phone. I can put my phone in there and use my phone as my camera to live stream. I have many times. The way technology is now, it is not hard, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Now, if you want to, like we have in our auditorium, we have a camcorder, an HD camcorder with a wireless mic attached to it and a streaming box attached to it. Now, that is a little bit of an investment. But again, I think it's worth it to be able to share the services in a way that is so widely accessible. And I have gotten messages from all over the world. I know people in Nepal watch our services. People in the Philippines watch our services. I've gotten messages from Middle Eastern countries where I guess if they're watching there, they're watching on black market internet, because depending on the country, I guess. And I've heard from countries that I know that they do prohibit the preaching of the gospel. They prohibit the Bible in those countries. But I've gotten messages from people in those countries expressing appreciation over being able to watch our content, and so I believe it is worth the investment. I would spend a lot more on it if the resources were there, but you don't have to. I mean, you can do it as for as little as your cell phone bill to really investing a lot of money in it. You can go all the way from free to really expensive. I think if I added up everything that I spend on being able to live stream, and again, when I say I spend, the Commerce Church of Christ supports me to be able to do this, and so they're providing for it. It would be a couple of $100 a month on a monthly basis, and then there's annual subscription type stuff like web hosting, things like that, and they make it possible for me to be able to do that. But you don't have to spend that much. Like I said, you can use your smartphone, and YouTube is free. So I really encourage sound preachers. Now, there's a lot of preachers that I wish never learned how to live stream, but I would love to see a tremendous increase, and we probably will after this, of good sound gospel preachers streaming content online. I've noticed that in the past year, there's been several more brethren that have started doing podcasts, like I've been doing Bible Q&A on Monday nights for a long time, and I've seen more things like that coming up where brethren are doing live stream podcasts, and I think all those things are good if the truth is being taught. So I'm really thankful that Sarah and her family, and I know several others, like I said, over half the congregation was gone yesterday. So I know many of them were watching online at home, and I'm thankful for our ability to do that. Let's see. Gwendolyn said, my congregation canceled. I used Zoom to worship with another congregation. See, there again, there's another example of someone who was not able to attend their local congregation, and so used technology, used an online service. Zoom is kind of like GoToMeeting. I think the difference between GoToMeeting and Zoom is that Zoom is able to their app, however they do it, I don't know, but they're able to carry more people at lower bandwidth, if I understand it right. Because I've been in GoToMeeting meetings where there was a problem with the bandwidth or a problem with the internet speed, and the person say, okay, let's switch to Zoom, and Zoom worked fine. So Zoom is a good app that works well. So I'm glad Gwendolyn was able to do that. That's great. Serena says, the church I attend had a few people at the building to live stream service on our church Facebook page. That's what we did I did it on both our, I use a service called Restream, and Restream, I've used it off and on different times. And I started using it again specifically for this because I wanted to be able to go to both our Facebook page and our YouTube page because different people watch it in different places. And so I used Restream to do that. I'm using Restream tonight to do both Facebook and YouTube tonight. And it works pretty well. I like it. Serena said that they live stream the service on Facebook page. They tried to make it as normal a service as they could. I watched it online. Again, that's great. And from what I've seen, a lot of congregations across the country, a lot of congregations did that, and it seemed to work out pretty well. Let's see. Serena goes on and says they had a prayer for the Lord's Supper and took at that time. Right. And that's, I suspect that those of our congregation that was taking the Lord's Supper. Now I have a little bit of a different view on that, I think, because, and I said this Sunday morning in my sermon, there's two parts of our worship that are part of our worship in the assembled church. And, I've seen people posting things in response to this current situation that kind of downplay the importance of the assembled church. But, you go to passages like 1 Corinthians, the end of 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and going on through the end of the book, that whole context of 1 Corinthians chapter 10, or toward the end of chapter 10, all the way through. Well, I'll put it up on the screen. Let me change my screen to the Bible page. There we go. And Paul talks about when you come together as a church in 1 Corinthians 11:18. And if you back up in 1 Corinthians to about verse 13? Well, maybe. Let me see. Well, okay. From 1 Corinthians chapter 11 all the way through the end of the book is all in the context of the assembled church. And he talks about the head coverings here in the beginning. Then he says, "Now in giving these instructions, I do not praise you, since you come together, not for the better, but for the worse. First of all, when you come together as a church, I hear that there are divisions among you, and in part I believe you." So it's very obvious there that Paul is talking about the whole church coming together in one place. And of course, obviously the local church, all coming together in one place. So when I see these posts that are kind of downplaying the biblical teaching about coming together as the church, and these posts about, and it is a biblical fact that the early church met in homes, but that doesn't change the fact that they were all coming together in one place. The church at Colossae that met in Philemon's house, well, that was the assembled church in Colossae, regardless of where they met. But I've seen those references being used in reference to this current situation as if to say it's perfectly fine for all of you to stay home and worship at home. Well, under the current circumstances, I would say it is understandable that people want to stay home. And even if a congregation decides to cancel their services altogether, I would say that, that is understandable. But you can't say that that's the same thing as the assembled church. And it seems like I've seen posts being made like that, saying that, if a family stays home and worships together at home, then that's the same thing, that they are the assembled church in that place at that time. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. And to use those passages like that, I would say that is that's being a little loose with the context, I think. Both the historical, the cultural, and the textual context, or I should say all, the context dealing, around those statements. Because when it talks about the church meeting in homes, well, that's still the assembled church. The congregation here at Northside, the people that make up the congregation here at Northside doesn't have anything to do with the building we're in. It has to do with the people that make up that congregation. And we would still be assembling as the Northside Church of Christ, or as this group of Christians, whether you call it Northside Church of Christ or not. As this group of Christians, we would still be assembling as the church. If it was at my house, or somebody else's house, or in a rented hall somewhere, or it's not the place that makes the difference, but it is the assembled church. Well, there are aspects of our worship, two things specifically, that are limited to the assembled church. For example, you don't read any references to the Lord's Supper being taken outside of the assembled church. It's something that is done in the worship of the assembled church. Same thing with the collection. The collection is taken up from the assembled church. That's why we don't go out, with fundraisers and asking donations online and things like that. We don't do that. Well, some do, but they are wayward. They're not following the biblical pattern when they get into asking for donations online. And so, we don't do that because the contribution is part of the worship of the assembled church. And don't start telling me that the contribution is not part of our worship, because I'm going to blast back at you pretty hard. If it's not part of our worship, then why did Paul say in 2 chapters of 2 Corinthians is dedicated to the contribution as a part of worship? Paul explicitly teaches in 2 Corinthians chapters 8 and 9 that when you give in the assembled church, when the collection is taken up and you give, that it is an expression of your love and devotion to God. He even uses the illustration of Christ, the sacrificial attitude of how Christ gave everything in his service to God as an illustration for how we're supposed to give. He talked about the Macedonians first giving themselves to the Lord and then to us. So don't tell me that the contribution isn't an act of worship. It is. It's an expression of our love and devotion to God. The way that we give is an expression of our commitment to God. Okay? So you don't see that being done outside of the assembled church. Every time you read about the collection, it's in the confines of the assembled church on the Lord's Day, right? So now I made a comment about that, and it's, and I said I was joking, and I was to mail in your checks because the preacher got to get paid, right? But I know that our members, the ones that weren't here to give yesterday, they will make that up when they're here, because they understand that the local congregation depends on the giving and budgets its work on the giving of its members. And so, I'm afraid that sometimes people think that if they're not at church on Sunday, then they don't have to give. And so when they are back in church or back in services, they don't make up for that time that they missed. But if you've purposed in your heart what you're going to give to God, and for whatever reason you're unavoidably hindered from being there, that doesn't change the fact that you purposed in your heart to give that to God. And so it needs to be made up, right? And I know that our folks do that. But, I said that kind of in jest because the contribution is part of the assembled church. Well, so is the Lord's Supper. The Lord's Supper is part of the assembled church. So I'm not a big proponent of taking the Lord's Supper around to sick and shut in. Now, I'm not saying if somebody asks me to, I won't. I will. If somebody says, because I understand that when you're not able to be in the services, you do miss that. And so if somebody asks me to bring them the Lord's Supper, I definitely will. I'm not going to tell them, no, you don't need to do that. But they really don't need to do that, because they're unavoidably hindered from being in the assembly of the assembled church. And the Lord's Supper is part of the worship of the assembled church. So if they ask me, I'll take it to them. But I don't just take them the Lord's Supper and give them the Lord's Supper. No, we have a worship service, and we sing and pray and have a devotional from God's Word, a lesson from God's Word, and if they want to put into the collection to be taken back to the congregation, then I take that. And I give them the Lord's Supper. The Lord, and I've heard preachers say, and it is absolutely 100% wrong to say this or to give this impression that the Lord's Supper is the most important part of the worship service. It is not. Our being together to worship God in spirit and in truth. John chapter 4, verse 23 and 24. Our being together to worship God in spirit and in truth is what's important. And that includes more than the Lord's Supper. And when you teach and when you present the Lord's Supper as the most important part of worship, well, then people get the idea that that's all they need to do. And you know, I'm thankful that we've never really had that problem any place that I've been. In any of the congregations I've preached for, we've never had an issue with people who thought that it was okay for them just to come, take the Lord's Supper, and then leave. I haven't seen that. Now, I have seen people come for part of the service and leave and not stay for the whole service for whatever reason. But we've never had a problem where we had people in the congregation that just thought they needed to come and take the Lord's Supper. I've heard a lot of people talk about that, and I've heard several preachers say that they had to correct issues like that where people were just coming to take the Lord's Supper and then leaving. I'm thankful that we've never had that issue where I've been, but I do know what leads to that kind of thinking. And that's this idea that one aspect of our worship is more important than any other aspect of our worship. And that is just not true. It's just as important to sing in our worship as it is to take the Lord's Supper and to have preaching and to pray and to have the collection. That is the worship of the assembled church. Those 5 things is the worship of the assembled church. And you can't elevate one above the others. What if we said that okay, we're going to have the Lord's Supper Sunday, but we're not going to sing? Well, people would flip out. Rightfully so. What do you mean we're not going to sing? We have to sing. Of course we have to sing because it's part of our worship, right? And maybe the emphasis that some have put on the Lord's Supper over the years is in response to how denominationalism has made the Lord's Supper kind of a special event, once a year, twice a year, or quarterly. They have the Lord's Supper, what they call the Lord's Supper, which they're not really taking the Lord's Supper. But they schedule it, other than every first day of the week. And so in response to that, and in combating man-made denominationalism, which we should, man-made denominationalism is not the true expression of Christianity. And so we should combat denominationalism. But I think maybe in responding to the denominational practice of scheduling the Lord's Supper other than every first day of the week, we have come back and we've said, well, you're leaving out the most important part of the worship service, or you're neglecting the body and blood of Christ, and it's going to be held against you and whatever. And it's kind of developed into this mentality that as long as you take the Lord's Supper, you're okay. As long as you take the Lord's Supper every first day of the week, that's all that matters. Well, no, that's not all that matters. What matters is that you're worshiping in spirit and in truth on the first day of the week. And so I said all of that to say this. The people that stayed home from church, from the assembly, and maybe I shouldn't say stayed home from church that way, but it's just part of our modern vernacular that we use it that way. I try to say assembly. But, for those that stayed home from the assembly, and again, I want to say, I believe justifiably so. I'm not trying to, lay blame at anybody that stayed home from the assembly. But those who did stay home from the assembly, I don't believe that they needed to take the Lord's Supper because they weren't in the assembled church where the Lord's Supper is taken. Now, at the same time, I will say that those who did bake their own bread and had a family worship service where they took the Lord's Supper and they sang and they prayed and they watched the sermon on the live stream, or either had their own devotional at home. That's certainly might even be better if dad is able to take out his Bible and lead the family in a devotional himself. But however they did it, if they went through the five acts of worship that we're supposed to observe on the first day of the week, that's great. I'm all for it. I love it. But I really don't think that outside of the assembled church that God is going to judge us or hold it against us if we don't do those acts of worship that in the inspired word are limited to the assembled church. For the families that stayed home and bake, and I really want to be clear. I'm not criticizing. If you did, that's great. I'm glad because it shows a commitment to your worship to God that I think is good. So I'm not criticizing at all. I'm just making a point, okay? What did you do about your contribution? You weren't able to put into the church treasury from home, unless maybe your congregation uses some kind of app for the giving, and maybe you were able to use the app to put into the church treasury. And that raises another question. And, sometimes I'm afraid that when we see innovations made for how transactions are done, we take issue with it before we think about actually what it is. Actually what it is. I remember I was in another country, and one of the men that had been working there for a long time, knew that culture much better than I did, talked about the members of the church giving goats to the church, and that was their contribution. They gave a goat to the church. Now for us that sounds strange, and I said, well, that's not scriptural. You gotta put money in the plate. And he said, well, for them, that is money. That is money. And he was right. I mean, that is a form of monetary exchange in that country. They pay for things in barter like that. They trade goats for produce, and that's financial transactions in that place. So sometimes I think we need to. But anyway, maybe you were able to put into the church treasury from home, but I don't think that that's typical. So you were adamant about taking the Lord's Supper, but what about the contribution? See, that's kind of my point. Now, again, not criticizing at all, just saying that for those that worshiped at home, followed along with an online worship service, but maybe didn't have the bread and juice to take it home, that's okay, because you weren't in the assembled church, and the Lord's Supper is part of being in the assembled church. So let me go back to the live stream. on YouTube, and I'll pick back up with Richard Briggs. We did all normal services. Numbers were low as expected. Many changed to may change to AM only. That's what we did. We just had our AM services. So he said may change to AM only. However, the thought about what about the people who work and can't make the AM but still want to worship may keep both. And that's really the purpose of a PM service. That's one of the things that I have expressed over maintaining our PM worship, because it's come up a time or two since I've been here about rearranging our worship services or doing something different for our worship services. And for example, in the standard time, when it gets dark really early, we have our second service at 4 o'clock, because we have several members who have trouble driving after dark. And so we want to have that evening service, and I guess that would be a late afternoon service. But we want to have that service where we can be done with enough time for people to get home before it gets dark. And then in daylight saving time, when it gets dark much later, like now it's getting dark at about 8 o'clock, we can go back to 6 o'clock. So when the time changes, we change our service times. When we change from daylight saving time to standard time, then we'll go back to 4 o'clock evening service. And then, when it changed back to daylight saving time, we'll go back to 6. It's been, brought up a time or two since I've been here. What if we just have an extended AM service and not have a PM service? And that's one of the concerns that I raised, is that, sometimes we have people, because of their work schedule, that can't make it in the morning, and they come in the evening. We've had visitors. We've had long-term visitors that were from other congregations further away that came here for our evening services for like 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Long-term visitors, maybe longer than that, because their work schedule had changed and they weren't able to make it to morning services where they went, and where they went didn't have evening services. So when they got off work, they came here so that they could go to worship on Sunday. And so I'm in favor of evening services under normal circumstances. So we did go to just AM services at this time to limit, because there's always some, and us preachers, we love them and so appreciate them, because there's always some in every congregation that it wouldn't matter if they had to dig through a snowdrift to get to the church building. If there were services that were scheduled and services that were taking place, they would be there, even if it was unsafe for them to do. That's been something that has concerned me. And I know one time, I think, since we've been here, maybe twice since I've been here, and I've been here for 6 years, we've canceled a service because of weather. And the cancellation was more out of concern for those who would try to make it to the building that shouldn't, right? So out of concern for them, we canceled the services, because we didn't want them to try to get to the building and get hurt. So it's kind of that way now. The more services we have at the building, the more they're going to get out and potentially be exposed to this virus. And so, to lessen the likelihood of that or the possibility of that, we decided just to go to AM services. We had our Bible class Sunday morning. And even if we didn't have our Bible class, I would still live stream it. So, we did tell everybody that we'll have Bible class and worship. But, and most everybody that stayed for worship or was here for worship was also here for Bible class. I think there may have been a couple or a few that came in after the Bible class that came for worship. But if people are coming for the worship service, why not go ahead and have the Bible class too? In my opinion, that's the way I thought about it anyway. So where Richard goes, they had all of their normal services, but are undecided yet whether to go to just AM or to keep both. Richard, I certainly pray the best for you and for the health of the congregation there, and I covet your prayers on our behalf also. Serena says, I watched the sermon and sang along with them and stuff. Put up my contribution for when I can get it, when I can give it at church, and that's great. And I suspect most of the people, if anybody watching has the idea that since you weren't at the church building on Sunday, you worshiped at home instead of at the church building, that's a skip day for your contribution. Don't think of it like that, because the leadership of the congregation where you attend budgets their activities based on the projected contribution, which includes your contribution. So, please make up your contribution in your home congregations when you're able to get back. And so I'm glad Serena is doing that. All right. I have exhausted the live chat on YouTube, so let me go over to Facebook. And on Facebook, Don says, we worshiped online yesterday. Robin made bread, and we had already purchased grape juice so we could have communion. We are planning the same next Sunday. Give me the info, and we will do it with you. You mean to watch our live stream? Okay, I'll post that in the comments. It is the Facebook page for the LaGrange Church. Let me get over here and get the link for that real quick. And I will post that in the comments, because we'll be streaming, and we have been for a long time, streaming our worship services. And like I said, at times I just stream the sermon, but during this situation, I'm going to be live streaming the whole service. And if we get, copyright dings, then I'll deal with that when it happens. And it may be that they've, relaxed the restrictions on that. And I see other congregations doing their singing online, so I don't know how they deal with that. Let's see. Hello, Heather. Good to see you watching. Where's all my comments? Facebook does not make it easy to keep up with the comments. So let me go back to where I was just a second ago. I guess I'll post that over on the live stream on YouTube also. So the link that I just posted on both Facebook and YouTube is for the Northside Facebook page, and we stream all of our services on Facebook and YouTube. Sometimes, if for whatever reason we're not able to have it on both, I'll just share the YouTube link to Facebook. But if you're following the Facebook page for the Church of Christ Northside, then however it's being streamed out, you'll get it there. So that would be great if you're able to do that Sunday. All right. I can't see. Let me see if I can get the comments here. See, it says 7 comments, but I'm only seeing a couple. So if I didn't get your comment, I do apologize. Let me see if I can get it over here on this page. Okay, yeah, I see you said thanks there. All right. Okay. Well, it looks like I'm all caught up on the live stream, so if there's no other questions, comments, feedback, input, I pray that all of you will continue to be safe and healthy, and that we will all be praying together to get through these very strange days. Strange days indeed. That we'll all be praying together to get through these strange days as quickly and as safely and as healthily as possible. So thanks for watching this evening. I am going to sign off now, and Lord willing, remember, if you're looking for a Bible class tomorrow morning at 10:30, I will be live streaming our regular Tuesday morning Bible class at that link for the Northside congregation on Facebook. I'll probably do that on YouTube and Facebook both. So if you're looking for that on YouTube, I guess I can post the YouTube channel also, I think. Well, I'm logged into YouTube on a different account, so I'll need to wait and post that in the video description after I sign off. So, but the link to the church Facebook page is there. So if you're looking for a Bible class tomorrow morning, you can certainly catch that at 10:30, and our Wednesday night Bible class also. And if I don't see you before next Monday night, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching Bible Q&A tonight.